Call tonight's meeting to order of the Norfolk School Committee, which is being held on Tuesday, January 12th. Time is 7:05 p.m. In accordance with the Governor's order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 20, relating to the 2020 coronavirus emergency outbreak, the January 12, 2021, 7 p.m. Norfolk School Committee meeting held live at the Norfolk Town Hall, Room 124, and shall be physically closed to the public to avoid group congregation. Alternative public access to this meeting shall be done through NCTV. This application will allow users to view the live meeting. Questions and comments submitted prior to the meeting will be read by the chair during the open public comments. The meeting will be recorded for future broadcasts on Norfolk Community Television. School committee meeting documents may be found in Norfolk Public Schools website at www.norfolk.k12.ma.us. And as a reminder, questions and comments can be submitted to schoolcommitteequestions@norfolk.k12.ma.us. Please note the questions are due prior to 3 p.m. on the day of the meeting in order for them to be read at the meeting. And we do welcome any and all comments that come our way. And as we start out every meeting, we read the mission statement, which is the Norfolk Public Schools offers a safe, joyful, and challenging learning environment that meets the needs of our diverse students. Through school, family, and community partnerships, we provide an education that inspires lifelong learners and cultivates caring and productive citizens of our ever-changing world. Roll call, please.
Sarah Ward.
Shannon Meneses.
Jennifer Wynn.
Medora Champagne.
Thomas Doyle.
Ingrid Alardi.
All right. So moving ahead, regarding correspondence, we do not have any, nor any public comment. So moving ahead, we just have a request. What you'll see is the request from the Norfolk Teachers Association to begin bargaining, and we will need to then appoint a subcommittee for that purpose. So basically, we would need a motion to go ahead and appoint two subcommittee members, or form a subcommittee, which will be two of us, to then proceed with negotiations. I would like to continue with it just because I had done the last million of these, but this one in particular, we got most of the way there, so I think I would be happy to volunteer as one person, so we just need one other person who wishes to be part of this, and then we need obviously a vote confirming those two folks.
I move to form a subcommittee.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now the fun part. Any other volunteers besides myself?
We should clarify too that we aren't rebargaining the entire contract. We are just rebargaining the salary portion. All the other terms have been resolved at this point.
I volunteer as tribute.
Thank you, Katniss. That's very nice of you.
I thought you wanted it. That's what I was saying.
I
It's like, I had like a mental note, Jen, just don't.
Yeah, we all knew
stop.
where that was going to
I
end
know.
up, so.
If you stay quiet long enough, someone breaks.
I'm just gonna keep looking down. It's fine.
So yeah, just to clarify Ingrid's point, a great majority of it is already done. So hopefully we can just kind of push this across the finish line, ideally for everybody, and that would be great. All right, so then.
Then we have Medora and Thomas, which would be two. So we should be good for that.
All right, so then further information on that going forward, but it will be, Medora and myself, and then meetings to be scheduled, and then obviously we'll provide updates as that continues. And then that's it for me. We are now on to.
Do you need to vote for that? For those two?
Do we need to vote to formally open the negotiations as well? Or is that
No, because we never had actually officially.
closed them?
Yeah, we
Close
didn't
and
close.
close.
We had
Okay.
an agreement to continue to bargain salaries after the first year. So they're requesting to, they are requesting to reopen, so we could vote to reopen the negotiations and appoint the subcommittee as two motions probably would be best.
Well, we tell you that we already voted on the motion as far as forming a subcommittee, and that's just a matter, the members were then separately appointed. So I guess, yes, we should do a motion as far as reopening negotiations, just to ensure that's correct. So do we have a motion to reopen negotiations with NTA?
I'll make a motion to reopen the, seconded.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now we're moving on, Ingrid.
All right, so First tonight, we have our business consultant, Todd Hassett, here to present a budget overview. So you have the packet, the slides in your packet, and we'll turn to Todd.
Thank you, Dr. Alardi. Good evening, everyone. So this evening, I want to just give the committee a overview of where we stand at the end of December from a financial standpoint with respect to our operating budget. At this point, we're 4 months into the school year with 6 months ahead of us. And typically when we get together and look at the second quarter, everything is settled in terms of staffing, programs, students, as far as placements are very clear. This year, as you know, has been a particularly challenging year. And it looks to continue to be that way as we go forward through the rest of the school year. So it's certainly presented more challenges to the administration at this juncture than we would typically be experiencing. So there's maybe a 6-page handout. The first slide is just a pie chart that shows the committee our current operating budget of just under $13.1 million and how the committee has allocated it in terms of the major state functional areas. As you can see, over 81% of our operating budget is targeted to be expended for instructional services, and then so on for the small portions for other operational costs. I will tell you this budget, the 13.1, includes a supplemental appropriation that we benefited from the fall town meeting of about $84,000, and that appropriation allowed us to add a remote teaching position for the back half of the year. It also allowed us to pay for 2 temporary custodial positions, one at each school, for the last 6 months of the year. Up to this point, those positions were funded through the CARES Act federal relief funds. And so the next set of slides, we'll just quickly walk through each major state functional area. The 1000 series administration, this includes the central office, the superintendent's office, business office, human resources, and legal services. And to date, we're projecting that most of the $508,000 budget will be expended with a small surplus. The one item that is tracking well that may change would be anything to do with the need for additional legal services beyond what we've anticipated. Certainly, reopening negotiations for a full contract with the teachers may involve use of counsel, but I think in this case, we're likely to have a small balance as the year goes through. The 2000 series, again, this is where the lion's share of our budget is targeted. Includes the principal's offices, the leadership for special education and curriculum, certainly the teachers and the paraprofessionals, guidance, psychological services, and all of the instructional materials and software that we provide our students. Just over $10.6 million of our $13 million budget is focused on instructional services to our students. This is in district. And at this point, we've had a number of challenges, as you probably know. I'm sure Ingrid has briefed you on the various staffing changes and how nimble the administration has had to be as the needs and conditions have changed during the school year this year. We've added, as I mentioned, remote teachers. We've not filled some positions that we typically fill. We have an assistant principal's position that's pending to be filled. And we've had the need for additional paraprofessional support beyond the budget. So we've really sort of tried to manage our way through this strategically under Ingrid's leadership. And to date, I'm projecting about a $7,000 shortfall in this area. There's a lot more that's going to happen in the next few months, so we're going to hang on and you know, try to do the best we can to manage this. For those of you who are new on the committee does have a budget policy that if any one of these functional areas has a deficit, a shortfall in excess of $5,000, the administration needs to present you a transfer to suggest that maybe another area that's doing well in the budget, some funds could be transferred. At this point, I don't anticipate needing to ask you to do that. We typically would bring this to the committee in May or June if there's an area that's running a little short. And we should know much more when we review the third quarter numbers in April. But again, staffing is still challenging in this area. The special need aides are continuing to, you know, we've been hiring and moving staff around to address needs as they seem to be changing. As I say, other years, it's a much more stable situation at this juncture. The 3000 series is primarily, in our case, utilized for its called other student services. The lion's share of this section of our budget, which is about $800,000, is focused on student transportation. This also includes our health and nursing services at each school, and our cafeteria support for food service. But the majority of these funds are allocated for transportation. Because we had a bit of a shorter school year and we're running a hybrid model, we did have to modify the contract with Holmes for our in-district transportation. That's been factored in. We also participate in a regional transportation program through the BICO Collaborative for our special needs in and out of district transportation. And we went through extensive negotiations with that group through the fall, and that has yielded some savings for us this year. However, the food service program has been challenged on the revenue side, and at this point, I'm anticipating we may need to utilize savings in transportation to fund and shore up and subsidize the food service program to get through the year. In terms of the 4000 series, this is our facilities, operations and maintenance, and also covers our technology, networking and infrastructure. It's about a $900,000 section of our budget. At this point, we have plans to utilize all of those funds. We're spending extra money, as you know, on cleaning, and I mentioned we did add the 2 temporary custodians for the last 6 months of this year. So this budget, as we go forward, may come down a bit in fiscal '22, assuming we don't fulfill those temporary custodial positions and things come back to some sense of normalcy. We do have, as many of you know, some deferred maintenance at the day school in particular, and even at the Freeman School now, we've enjoyed the school for, I think, 9 years. This is our 9th or 10th year in the school. We forget, we think it's a brand new building, but we're starting to require some effort in this area. And Matt Hafner works with us, as you know, to best utilize both town facility funds and our 4000 series funds. The fixed charges, the 5,000 series is very modest in our budget. This may be bigger in a district that has high school or other programs, but this includes insurance programs, contractual benefits, and any employee retirement incentives or contractual obligations we may have. At this point, I'm anticipating we'll have about a $15,000 savings in this area. And that's due to the fact that we've been noticed that we expect 2 teacher retirements at the end of this year. And we had anticipated as many as 4, but it looks like 2 is most likely at this point. So these savings may be available to the committee to shore up the instructional services, for example. And again, we'll come back to you later in the year as things become a little more clear. It's possible, there's been, thought that there may be possibly a 3rd retirement, but it's not clear at this point. So we're anticipating 2 as part of this projection. The 7,000 series, we typically don't use much, but this state functional area primarily relates to capital assets, to acquisition of facilities, major equipment, or major improvements to facilities. And as you know, we've done our last couple of major improvements through other town appropriations outside of our operating budget. The roof project at the day school, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and the new Freeman Kennedy School a few years ago. The last state functional section, the 9,000 series, relates to our out-of-district expenses for those students we're not able to service in district. And this could involve another in-state school. It could involve a residential placement, of which we don't have any currently. It could be a placement to a private school or a collaborative. And many of our outplaced students do attend the BICO collaborative, of which we're a member, so we have a discounted tuition benefit. We also do receive some state reimbursement for high-cost special ed cases, and those funds are utilized to offset or reduce the budgetary impact for tuitions. And funds come in from the state each quarter, and they're a reimbursement for any of that excess spending we did the prior year. And we utilize those funds to reduce the local tax impact on our outplaced students. This year, the budget is about just under $200,000, and we're utilizing, I believe, about $68,000 of state reimbursed funds in addition to that to cover the placements. I project about a $29,000 savings in this area, and that's due to the fact that we do have one outplacement that we're sharing 50-50 with another district. The next slide, in summary, as you'll see, we've got in each major area some modest savings or shortfalls in a couple of areas. And at this point, I'm projecting we will utilize 99.7% of our operating budget based on what we know today. At this juncture, as compared to other years, this is probably the tightest, closest to 100% projection we've looked at it at the second quarter in many years, since the tough times through 08, 09. In addition to our operating budget, we do receive a number of federal allocation grants through the Department of Ed, through DESE. We also this year, as you probably know, have benefited from some other COVID-19 related federal aid in the form of grants administered through DESE. And also the town has received FEMA and CARES Act reimbursement from the state, all federal funds that we've participated with that paid for our 2 temporary custodians through the end of December, that supported a lot of PPE. We were able to purchase a number of Chromebooks for students for at-home work. We will, later in the year, have a report for the committee to the extent of what all of this federal COVID-related funds are, some of which are administered through grants we're doing, and others cooperatively with the town of Norfolk. In terms of our other special funds, we have some fee-based programs, as you know, primarily the food service program, our SAC, or before and after school program, preschool tuition, and facilities rental. As you can imagine, all of these programs this year are taking a major reduction in revenue. I mentioned earlier during the budget discussion that the food service program will likely need some sort of a subsidy, and that we will try to utilize savings in the transportation expenses to offset that. Also, with respect to the preschool tuition revolving fund, revenues are down there. The program had to be altered, as you can imagine, this year, and as a result, we typically pay for 4 staff people through this. We'll be lucky to pay for 1 or 2. So again, that's putting pressure on the instructional services section of our budget to pay for preschool aides that would typically have been covered through fee-based programs. So it's been a particularly challenging year for us, and it continues to be. But certainly with Ingrid's leadership and guidance, we've managed fairly well so far. It continues to be challenging. And lastly, we do also have a gift fund, and the community is very generous to support education, as you know, and we have about $48,000 set aside that is available for a variety of teacher programs, technology improvements, and in a normal year, support for some of the Camp Horndale program. So with that, I would just welcome any questions or comments the committee might have. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. As always, great job. Very thorough. I have a few questions.
Sure.
I know per the union contract, when do teachers have to let you know their retirement date? Is it like April, May? When would we know for sure?
They have to notify us by December 1st of an intent to possibly retire. There is not a set confirmation date
Oh,
for the
okay.
contract.
Sorry, I'm thinking my own.
Yep. We
contract.
did in the new contract, negotiate into the new contract a financial incentive for early confirmed notification. So we do have 2 definite retirements, but not the third we're unsure of at this point. And there isn't a drop dead date for notice.
Okay. And then my next question was, when you're talking about the 2021 budget, is this based on, we're assuming it's just as is, like a level funded budget as what we have now?
The 2021 budget is this fiscal year.
Okay, then the one that you're projecting for.
We haven't developed a 2022. This is a report of spending to date.
Oh,
and
this is for January through June?
this was from September.
From September.
From July 1 through to current.
Oh, all right, my
The budget we
apologies.
approved in June.
Oh,
Yep.
okay, I'm thinking it's for next school year.
Yeah, it always
Fiscal
looks a
year
little bit
always
off
is
because
different.
this is fiscal 2021. because
Okay,
it's-
sorry.
Yep, no
Math
problem.
business was clearly not my forte.
No, that's okay.
And then my last question is the gift fund. I'm curious, does that carry over to the next fiscal year? Does it have to be, because I know we didn't do Borndale this year, I don't believe, and we didn't do Field Day, so I'm sure there must be some.
That's
so
why
that we
there's a
can carry it
slightly
over.
higher
Okay.
balance, but
Well,
yes,
that's
that's a
good.
revolving fund.
Oh,
Yeah, the
perfect.
revolving funds we can carry over year to year, but there's not that many that fall into that category.
But this does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay, that's it. Thank you for the tutorage. Fiscal year.
And
Thanks.
Jen, I would just follow up your question. As Ingrid said, we're not talking yet about the FY '22, the next school year budget, but we'll begin, we've already started developing that. And given the challenges we had this year and the way we had to modify staffing, compounded by the fact, as you may recall, our budget was reduced 2 or 3 times during last year's budget process. And our final budget, including the fall funds we just received, resulted in this year's budget being up only 2.6%, which is substantially less than, what we would typically need to just carry current services forward year to year.
Because I believe if I recall correctly, it was about 4% to carry over what we needed, but we only got 2.6%
Yes.
when all is said and done.
Right.
So we're actually going to, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to be starting 2022
With some
with a
positions that were eliminated.
pretty
in last year.
significant
Yeah.
in the hole to get up,
Yeah.
which, okay, is not good.
Yes.
At all.
Most years for us, you're right, it's between 4 and 4.25%, depending on, the teacher's contract and that sort of thing, any other economic items. But typically, just to bring the current services forward a year, it's a little over 4%.
And that also reflects the fact that for the last several fiscal years, we've had significant increases in enrollment. So it's carrying over the staff and adding the additional teaching positions we needed to manage the new growth, particularly at DHL of Day.
Right, I believe this is our largest kindergarten class to date, if
Yeah.
I'm correct.
Yep.
167.
Yep.
And I don't see Norfolk stopping growth anytime soon.
Yeah, we'll see.
All you
Well, I mean, and
developers.
if we want to zoom out even one more click, we never fully, to my understanding, recovered from the reductions that were made in '08 and '09.
That's correct.
So we've been continually trying to play catch-up and unable to do so for the past 10 years plus because of the increase in enrollment. So it would be bad enough had everything been
Right.
kind of at an even keel
Yep.
before this started. But now you can't even say that, level services this year into next year, if we have a full return to
Two different
school,
numbers.
would be a drastic reduction in services, essentially,
Absolutely.
right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Anxiety is going up. This is not good. Yeah, I'm gonna be very vocal that this is not good.
I do just want to thank Todd as well.
Thank you, Todd.
It has been a really, really difficult year, and as Todd said, there's been a lot of changes and unexpected factors that have impacted our budget. So changes to the Department of Ed requirements for instruction, that we've had to hire new teachers, changes in students choosing different platforms for learning, new students coming into the district. So we have had to add quite a few positions that were unbudgeted. And Todd is always great about looking for other areas of savings to try to offset those so that we don't have to come back to the committee for transfers. So not an easy job managing when I have to go down the hall and say, oh, we need another position. Can you fund that? So he's been great. So I really appreciate working with Todd. So thank you. All right. Any other budget questions? All right.
Thank you, Todd.
Thanks,
Thank
Todd.
you.
Very much.
Pleasure. My pleasure.
All right, next on the agenda for tonight, as you know, we have been working since back in, Vicki, I'll have you put the slides up if you don't mind. Since back in November, we sent out parent surveys and staff surveys. We had been about 6 to 8 weeks into implementing our hybrid model, and we sent out surveys to gather feedback from the public as well as from our teaching staff to determine what was going well and what areas that we might need to look at and to strengthen. I've shared the feedback summaries from both surveys with the school committee. The particular areas that we were looking at were increasing student contact with teachers on the remote learning day, increasing some more live instruction was a pretty common theme from both parents and staff, as well as some challenges people were having with managing and navigating the special subjects. So those were some of the things that we were really had consistent feedback on that we looked at as we were developing our Phase 2 plan. As we were working on that plan, the Department of Ed also came out with new revised student learning time guidelines. So we had to take a step back and take a look at our shifts that we were making to be sure that they were responding to the needs that we heard in both surveys, but also going to be compliant with the new regulations DESE was putting forward. So we're going to present to you tonight our proposed reopening plan for the school committee to vote. We gave you a preview of it at the last meeting, so I can go through it a little bit more quickly. Vicki, if you can go to the first slide. Obviously, we are planning to remain in the hybrid model of instruction. For the public, I think everybody's well aware at this point, hybrid learning is the split model where students are partially learning in school during some days and also learning remote. The curriculum is continuous between the two. The advantages of the hybrid model are that all kids get to spend some in-person time in school directly in contact with their teachers, but it allows us to maintain those rigorous safety guidelines of social distancing and limiting movement through the building and all of the other requirements we had to put in place. In phase 2 of our model, we are making adjustments to address the areas of need that were identified by parents and staff, as well as the Department of Education. All of our students in grade 1 through 6 will now have a combination of 35 hours of live instruction between their in-person learning days and virtual live instruction on their remote asynchronous days. Our students in kindergarten will have about 31.5 hours of live instruction. We're switching that model a little bit differently, as we know that our kindergarten students are less able to learn virtually through remote learning platforms. All of the kids will have live lessons in the content areas on their remote learning days. And we're not required by the Department of Ed, but we are modifying the opt-out program, our remote-only program, to be consistent with our in-person learning in our hybrid model, because we're keeping the curriculum and the expectations continuous between those two platforms. We do believe that all the things that we're proposing tonight will help us to increase the effectiveness of our teaching and learning, and will benefit students across the district. The plan is to begin implementation of this phase 2, this week. So many of our teachers have already started introducing the live content instruction to the students that are learning from home on the remote days. They're introducing students and really working this week on building the routines. In grades 1 and 2, we're introducing students to the new remote teachers that we have hired that will be supplementing the classroom instruction. So we're really getting the foundation in place this week, and full implementation of the new model, pending school committee vote tonight, will begin January 18th. Our students will continue to log in every morning to their daily lessons, their social emotional learning and class meetings. I'm going to turn it over to Vicki at this point. She's going to walk through the curriculum details, what the sample schedules will look like, and then I'll take it from her when she's ready.
Thank you very much, everybody. It's great to be here. So I just wanted to take you through a little bit more of a detail for what it's going to look like for each grade level. I just want to also mention that the partnership with our Norfolk Teacher Association has been invaluable during this whole process, and also our educators and our school administrators have really risen, as always, to the complex kind of task of having to plan for the shift. So there's been a lot of hard work put in the last couple of weeks to kind of make this happen. And one of our goals, besides just meeting the DESE expectations, we really wanted to ensure that the added lessons kind of meet the developmental ages of our students, and also enrich and support their learning. And our teachers are very intentional. They put a lot of intention to their planning, and we really didn't want to compromise that. So I think that the plan we have going forward is really going to meet all the requirements. So in kindergarten, as Dr. Lardy kind of mentioned before, the students will begin attending school 5 days a week, starting next Wednesday, January the 18th. The first Wednesday of each month will be a remote learning day for our students. The teachers are going to also use this Wednesday to do some common planning time, to be able to meet with our content specialists and kind of plan out the rest of the month in terms of instruction. Students will, during that remote Wednesday, the first Wednesday of the month, students will log in to a morning meeting and then complete some asynchronous assignments the teachers have been assigning. Kindergarten specials will continue to be delivered during the remote learning hours, alternating between live lessons and pre-recorded lessons. We felt that at this stage, it's really challenging for kindergarten students to learn remotely, so we really prioritized to bring them back in person more. For grades 1 and 2, we gave some autonomy for our teachers in terms of how they distributed the the required hours by DESE, like I said, we really wanted to make sure that it meets the needs of our students, was kind of like our priority. So it's gonna look a little bit different between grade 1 and grade 2, what the learning is, how the learning is laid out. So in grade 1 and 2, students are going to log in for a 45-minute small group lesson that will be delivered by their remote learning teacher, and this is all going to be on their remote learning days. Students will also, in addition, log in to a live whole class meeting or mini lesson with their classroom teacher at one point during those remote learning days. So that would be either a Monday, Tuesday if you're a cohort B student, or a Thursday, Friday if you're a cohort A student. On Wednesday, students from both cohorts will have an opportunity to have another touch point with their teacher in addition to the morning meetings. And those, the focus of the lessons will really be determined by what the teacher feels would be the most valuable for their students to learn, maybe to have an extra review on for that week. You can look in terms of an end-of-day meeting. It could be a lesson that might focus on a reteach, maybe a math lesson that the kids might need maybe another overview of. So we really kind of, like I said, left it up to the teachers to determine how to structure that time. And our remote learning teachers will also add another 30-minute lesson on in addition to the morning meeting and what the teachers are offering. So our students will really have numerous opportunities on their remote days to have support and have direct instruction from teachers. Our remote learning teachers, to plan for their lessons, right now they're going to be focusing on English language arts. Grade 1 and grade 2 teachers we partnered, and they've decided that writing was really the one area that is really challenging for students to learn independently. So they identified that being our greatest area of need at this time. But we kind of are keeping this very flexible to be able to shift that later on in the year if we find that another content area needs support. And our remote learning teachers plan weekly with our classroom teachers to make sure that their lessons are consistent with what the teachers are offering in person. And music, art, and PE at those grade levels will continue to alternate between live and remote lessons on a bi-weekly basis. In grades 3 through 6, the teachers are going to be delivering all of the live lessons. The schedules, again, are going to differ between grades 3 and grade 6, of course, because the developmental ages of the students, there's a big difference, and also what is the most effective way for them to deliver instruction. So teachers have developed schedules that will be, if they haven't been yet, will be shared with families very soon. In the upper grade levels, students will have numerous opportunities to log in for live instruction throughout the day. The teachers in each grade level identified various content areas that they felt would really optimize their learning. The way the lessons usually are structured is the teacher provides a mini lesson, and then there's a follow-up where students receive additional support in their independent work. Teachers are also have been trying breakout rooms to give students an opportunity to work with a peer, maybe who is learning in person that day. So there's a lot of opportunities for collaboration for students. On Wednesdays, students in both cohorts will have their morning meeting, their SEL lesson, and then one other opportunity to touch base with the teacher. And again, that time we kind of allow teachers to structure to be able to, so they can be responsive to the needs of their class. Because we have this space at Freeman Kennedy, we're able to offer phys ed in person. The principals have been working with our custodians to really set up a space that is conducive to our social distancing requirements to be able to offer this content area safely. And so PE will not be offered remotely going forward. Music, art, and band will continue to alternate between live and remote lessons on a biweekly basis, because those are still areas that we're not able to meet the DESI requirements for safety, because music still has a lot of, like, students sing, and, it's really hard to do that with masks, so. I put together just sample schedules. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them because I know you have them in your packets. But just to kind of, the way that they're represented is for kindergarten, you just see what the students, a typical week for a student in the morning group and the afternoon group will look like, and how it breaks down each week. And like I said, the first Wednesday of each month is going to be a remote learning day for kindergarten students. And the in-person instruction totals to about 30 hours, and then our live specials over the course of 2 weeks totals 1.5 hours. So our kindergarten students over the course of 2 weeks receive 31 and a half hours of live instruction.
Vicki, I just want to jump in there and just, for the committee's purposes, the new SLT requirements that DESI has rolled out require students to receive at least 35 hours of live instruction over the 2-week period. The way they've defined that is that the 35 hours is averaged across all grade levels. And in the regulations, if you read them, it says that that decision to average the hours was intentionally made, knowing that high schools and middle schools provide more content instruction and live stream it, and the expectations for the lower elementaries would be lower than that. As a district without a middle and high school, we are forced to meet a higher standard than most other districts across the entire state. So we are required to provide the full 35 hours. Kindergarten is exempt from the new regulations. So when you see kindergarten at 31.5, the regulations are for students in grades 1 through 12. They don't apply to kindergarten. And that's because even in the regular operating year, kindergarten regulations, many districts offer a half-day program, and the time on learning requirements are different for kindergarten without COVID. Go ahead.
I have a quick question. How is it tracked? How is the time, is it reported to DESI?
Yes.
Down to, like,
yes.
specific?
They did an initial survey, and they only collected data from grades 1, 4, 7, and 10. And every district filled that data out, and then they averaged it to figure out what their target would be. So again, when you take that data and you compare it across the state, we are providing slightly less learning time, but our average is not impacted by a middle and high school. So when you look at just the elementary comparisons, we're very comparable with other districts.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Sure. And that really has been the challenge, is to try to meet, because we like I said, we always had the plan to increase learning time. I think that we know that that's best practice, but to meet like a set number of hours, that's what made it really challenging for our district, because like Dr. Lardy said, we can't pull from our high schools in terms of additional hours that a lot of districts are able to.
Yeah,
And I think the other comment I would have with that is we wanted to, we're required to meet the learning time. We wanted to do it in a way that's meaningful.
Right.
So we could just put a camera in every classroom and live stream, and that's what some districts have done. They're just live streaming the classroom. We know that that does not lead to effective learning.
Well,
So-
particularly at this lower age level.
Exactly, at this lower age
First
level.
graders.
No,
But there are districts that are live streaming, and
Right,
that's
and that's
a
how they're
solution.
able
at the
to-
lower grades.
Yes.
be there every day. And then I heard some districts are hiring non-certified staff, like
Yeah.
they're just hiring.
Mm-hmm.
The department is
random
offering
people.
waivers because there's a critical shortage of staffing, but
Yeah.
we didn't
I know,
want
I've
to do
heard,
that.
Yeah,
so-
I've heard an insane amount of waivers.
Yeah.
So I personally would want my child to be taught by a certified person.
Yeah. And so it was challenging to meet really in first and second. It was challenging to meet the required hours and do it in a way that we knew would lead to effective learning.
Thank you. This is an amazing amount of work between the NTA, administration, Dr. Lardy, and if I'm forgetting
Thank you.
anyone else, I apologize, but this is incredibly, the minutia of it is incredible. So thank you for just being so flexible in your thinking.
We appreciate that, thank you. Yeah, so like I said, we really want to be intentional in our planning, we just didn't want to just check a box.
Not easy, the changes, for
Right.
sure.
So if you look at a student, so we kind of, the chart represents cohort A student, just I think just for ease of following a plan. So if you look at for grades 1 and 2, and like I said, this is just an example, like each grade level, each teacher has kind of, they have put together a schedule that, like I said, best meets the needs of their class, but on Monday and Tuesday, student will attend in-person learning. On Wednesday, they'll have a remote day, which they'll have their live SCL. HOD does open circle, and they have a lesson once a week, and then they do morning meetings that kind of support the messaging. So they have their SEL, or morning meeting in the morning. They will meet with a live remote, with our remote teacher for a live lesson. And then they'll have a live whole class meet with their teacher as well. And like I said, the content and the structure of it will be determined by the teacher. On Thursday and Friday, the students will log in with both their cohorts for that live SEL mini lesson. And then they will have a 45-minute lesson with a remote teacher only with their cohort. And they will then have an opportunity to log in with their teacher to meet both cohorts for an additional time of instruction. And they might also have a live or a remote special on one of those days, or both those days as well. When we broke down the instructional time, we're averaging about 34 hours. Like I said, it's a little bit lower in grade 1 than the rest of the grade levels, but we are averaging across all of our grades 1 through 6 grades to kind of help us meet the 35 average hours. Is there anything? In grades 3 through 6, again, if you're following a cohort A student, on Monday and Tuesday they will attend a regular school day. On one of those days they might have an in-person phys ed lesson that would be delivered. It replaces one of the math breaks because the students will have an opportunity for movement then, and to have some, like I said, an opportunity to take a break there too, and it will optimize our learning time as well. On Wednesday, they'll log in for their SEL lesson, which Freeman Kennedy has Second Step as our SEL program. They will then have a live whole class meeting delivered by their classroom teacher. Like I said, again, the content will be, and the structure will be determined by each grade level teacher. And then they might have music or art live or remote. On Thursday and Friday, the students will log in for their morning meeting, and then they'll have numerous opportunities throughout the day to log in for different lessons in different content areas. We're averaging right now between 2.5 hours to 3.5 hours per day on those remote days, like I said, depending on the grade level. And our total for our upper grades is 36 hours, which is a little bit higher than what the state is requiring, but they're helping us bring up the hours, the average for our lower elementary, which we felt was really appropriate. Like I said, again, given the ages of our kiddos. And then our fully remote model is, as they've always had, they're mirroring the increase in instructional time that is occurring in each of the grade levels. So the students will have a very comparable experience. The one shift for in grades 3 through 6, they're going to have live PE lessons on a weekly basis, which is what similar to what the students in grades 2 through 6 are receiving during their in-person days. So there won't be any remote phys ed lessons in grades 3 through 6. They will all be delivered live for our remote, fully remote classes.
Go right to the next slide, and I know we're running late, so I'll try to be quick. A few additional things that we wanted to highlight that'll be changes in the model. In terms of attendance, we are required to track student participation in all the live learning sessions. So for kindergarten, we'll just take attendance regularly when the kids are in person in school. Specialists will track participation in the special subjects by seeing who logs into those classes. Grades 1 through 6, they'll be the same. We'll take attendance through Google Platform, and teachers will take attendance for each live learning session to track students' participation in the overall program. The special education, So we have been looking at, we've expanded the criteria for bringing more students with higher needs into the district for more in-person learning. So we talked about that in August, that we were prioritizing students that met the DESE criteria for high needs learners. We've expanded that now, and we're including any students who receive more than 7 hours a week of specialized services on their IEP, or who are making minimal progress towards their IEP goals, and who are challenged with accessing the remote instruction as a result of their disability. So we have brought back about 50 more students for in-person learning. Those students are coming on their cohort days, plus an additional either 1 or 2 half days a week for instruction. We also continue to look at our preschool programs, if you want to jump ahead to that. So what's the most challenging for us for preschool is that we are not able to provide a remote option. It just does not work for a 3-year-old to access virtual instruction. So our preschool students, while they're in hybrid, we don't have a great alternative for when they're not in school, because it's just not developmentally appropriate. We would like, they are the highest priority for bringing students back when it's safe to bring and consider more in-person learning. That would not be able to be done until the transmission rates start to come down out of the red for Norfolk. So once we see those transmission rates start to decline, and also that's paralleling the time where vaccines are being rolled out for our teaching staff, preschool will be the first group that we look at bringing back for more in-person time. We also don't have, 2 of the big barriers for us for the other grades are transportation and lunch. Those 2 things do not really apply to preschool, so it's easier to consider that group. So we'll be monitoring that, and I expect that once conditions allow, we'll be looking at a full return for our pre-K. Last item, I just wanted to say another part of our planning, when we're talking about doing live instruction, teachers are teaching in a mixed platform because they have half of the students in front of them and half of the students at home. We didn't want to go with just simply live streaming because we know that leads to passive learning. So we really worked hard to increase the technology so that it would be fluid. We expanded our bandwidth at both schools through E-rate funding. We also added access points to strengthen the Wi-Fi throughout the buildings. And then we upgraded our technology hardware. At the Freeman Kennedy, because the building is new construction, we were able to bring in Ethernet cables to all of the classrooms, so teachers don't have to rely exclusively on Wi-Fi. It's a little less glitchy, it's a little more stable. And we also bought additional equipment. So we bought a second Chromebook for all of the classrooms with a front-facing camera so that teachers can broadcast the smartboard screen. We brought larger monitors so they can really see the students at home and be able to see who's raising their hand or interact. We have document cameras so we can project documents that we're looking at for students at home to see. All of that was primarily done through the CARES Act funding, grant funding. It didn't really hit our operating budget. And I want to show you a little video clip because, again, when we talked about doing live remote instruction, we wanted to make sure it was effective. We wanted to make sure students at home were able to engage, participate, contribute to the discussion. So we have a very brief, I think it's a 1.5-minute video clip that'll show you what the setup looks like and how students are participating. So Vicki, you want to introduce that?
Sure. So this is Mrs. Zolo's 4th grade class, and our teachers have been kind of slowly rolling out and trialing teaching the lessons to both students in both platforms, and Mrs. Zolo was brave enough to let us record her, which is amazing. And I just have to say that we were so excited to be able to get this video. We added it just today, but it really captures just how intentional our teachers are with their planning. So you'll get a chance to see, she calls it's a math energizer. It's a little warm-up that kids often do before they dive into a lesson to kind of engage them and activate their critical thinking skills. So that's what you're going to be, that's what she's the focus is of this video.
You'll see here at the front of the classroom a Chromebook, monitor, they're facing a smartboard. There's the smartboard. You can see we can move the monitor. The monitor is connected to the Chromebook and it allows teachers to have a larger view of students at home in grid view. Watch as the teacher has shared her screen so students at home can view the problem that they've been tasked with solving. Students are using whiteboards and the teacher's going to go to the front of the room, check out the grid view, see what students are working on, where they're at, and interact with students both in class and at home.
Okay. All right, or you can just put a thumbs up on the camera. Okay, I see Avery, Piper, Ricky. All right. Ooh, we're moving along. I'm still waiting on some adults to have their hands up, but I don't see anyone. Oh, there goes 2. So if you don't know, put down a number. Put down 1.
I just want to point out that the screen she has on the chairs, she can see all the kids that are learning remotely, and they can see her. So that's how it's set up, just to give you an idea, which is looking
What
at
comes
the
after
lesson.
1 in consecutive order, Emma? Okay, keep going. Now that's consecutive order. Now the next step, Emma, says to what? When you add each one, does that equal 18?
I mean,
Okay, so what are you gonna do next?
I'll tell you when to turn it
Now
off.
you know where, okay, all you need is a little push, okay? So why don't you try 1, 2, 3, 4, write them down. And then see if you add them, will they become 18? Try that, try that. Okay, let's see, is everyone in B ready? Let me see your thumbs. Okay. All right, you know what I liked about doing these brain busters remotely is that you can't look around the room because you only see what's in your bedroom, and your bedroom's not giving you any answers.
Is she wearing a microphone?
Watch as
Or they just can
Mrs.
hear her?
checks
She
in
she might be. We are purchasing
and then
microphones.
calls on a student. The student takes a moment to unmute and then shares her response.
Let's see, Miley, what did you get?
I got 1,456 because it goes 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. If you do boom, you do get 18.
Watch as Mrs. Zolvo heads over to her document camera. There's a copy of the problem. There's a whiteboard placed under the document camera. She writes out the student's response and then takes students through solving the problem. Both cohorts are actively involved.
Ah, let's try it. So you said 3,456?
Yes.
Okay, so 3 plus 4 is 7. 5 plus 6 is 11. And 7 plus 11 equals
18.
18. All right. If you got it right, stand up and do 18 jumping jacks. Go. 1, 2.
So that was the
3.
student that's learning remotely that was sharing the answer with the class, so.
No, they can't see me. I have my video off. Okay?
Hi, Todd. We can hear you.
Oh,
But we can't see you.
That was strange.
Video's off, your audio is on.
All right. So that gives you a snapshot of what it looks like, what the technology is. We have all the tools in place. We're waiting for a few pieces of equipment. We're rolling those out this week. On Tuesday, which is a full-day professional development day, the tech team is meeting with grade levels. We'll provide some content support for anybody who needs it, and we're good to go for Wednesday to roll it out. So we're happy to answer any questions, and then we're looking for a vote for the committee to approve Phase 2 plans for the Phase 2 learning models. Both the report that I put in your packet as well as the slides will go on the website tomorrow after you have voted in any revisions that we need to make.
I mean, it's just amazing to see that, how many balls you have in the air while you're doing this. And it's
Yes.
just, you can sort of visualize it in your head, but to see it happening is just exhausting.
It is exhausting, and
yeah.
you know, I would say we have had some teachers that started to roll this out this week, and I've gotten very good feedback from teachers who've started. They said that it was great to be able to help kids that are learning at home that were struggling, to have both their cohorts together, but pretty universally reported they went home exhausted the first week.
sure.
It's new. Tom, I don't know if would you agree with that? Exhausting. But as you could see through the video with the tools that we have, the kids are actively engaged. They're all working on whiteboards. They're all sharing their responses across cohorts. So we're confident that the learning we're adding is rich and meaningful.
Really neat to see.
And does some of them have to do like a dress rehearsal? Like, I mean, I'm imagining that she was going back and forth and figuring out who she's talking to, and I would think it would take like
I need a
a
bigger
little bit of
monitor.
practice.
I need a bigger
It
monitor.
definitely takes some practice.
I'm having anxiety just thinking about trying to manage.
Trying to figure out. Yeah.
It's a different process, and that's why both Vicki and I have said the Teachers Association have been incredible. They've embraced this. They've tried new tools. I've heard teachers say that they've said to their class, I'm learning with you. I mean, none of us have ever done this before. And the kids are invested in that too. So it's not going to be perfect every day. There are times that we have issues like, the mic's on, the mic's off, all those kinds of things. But I think overall, it's a robust platform, and I think a credit to our teachers who have taken this on, and we'll get better and better and better about it. And hopefully, by the time we're experts, we don't need it anymore.
It'll be over.
So that's all of our hopes. But I do think it's a strong model. I think it meets all the required guidelines. I think it responds to the concerns that parents had. Bringing PE in takes one less burden off parents for logging in for those phys ed classes at the upper grade levels. We're not able to do that at the lower grades. We're looking at ways to provide some flexibility for families with that, and that we're still kind of fleshing out. But I think the model is solid and strong.
I have a big ask for the teachers. As a parent, I understand a lot of this is getting communicated through email. Would they ever consider putting on the Google Classroom in announcements like, this is the schedule for the day, something like that?
We can certainly share this.
I'm saying just ask and talk about it. Just as a parent, like working full time, I'm like, I don't know. I just don't know what time. And looking at this, I have to tell you personally, I'm like, and I think it's great. I'm not trying to take away from any work, but I just think it would be really super helpful to
Have the
consider having a list of like, and I know that's more work or just like 5 minutes, like, hey guys, don't forget you have ELA at 10:15 today to sign in.
Yeah.
Just something to, and that your cohort you're meeting with a remote teacher at 1.
Yeah.
Something like that. It's
I
just
think a
very-
lot of our teachers have put schedules in Google Classroom, and that's something we certainly can share back. I do know that for the upper grades, teachers are reminding kids, we're finishing up, don't forget you need to log back in at 10 o'clock for math. So they're sending those reminders through the day,
Yeah.
but we can certainly share that feedback.
Just an ask. And I've heard other feedback too. It's like, I don't know what day, I don't know what week, color week it is. I don't.
Yeah, the
If it
color
was there.
coding at that's the only, I mean, I
And I know
think-
we're doing the best that we're
no.
doing.
For,
It's
for me,
just-
I don't know what week we're in. That was
I don't know.
like,
If they
never
make it,
know
they make
which
it.
week
I
we're
just
But
in.
the thing is,
can't
the
deal.
Monday to Friday schedule will be the same each week. The only thing that will fluctuate is, actually, it doesn't. The times of all the remote sessions will be the same week to week to week. So
And if
your
there
Monday will look the
was-
same as your Tuesday. The only thing that varies is the specials are either live or remote, but they're scheduled for the same time.
So if there was something on the
So it will be a
classroom-
fixed schedule. It won't vary every day.
So we could, in theory, just once we know which week
Write
we're
it
in,
down.
presupposing we know what week we're in. I'm talking
It'll
about
be the
myself.
same each week,
Sure,
so
sure.
it won't be
Okay.
alternating weeks.
We could just print something out and
Yeah.
tape it,
Yes.
Yep.
to
This
my
is your
forehead for my
schedule.
children to
My
look
children's
at.
in a Google, I could only do it in a Google Calendar, and that way I
Yep.
knew, like, otherwise I'd be like, green, gold.
Well,
I
that's
don't
what,
know.
and some people have caretakers taking care of their children, and some children have executive functioning issues.
Yeah.
And they can't say, oh, Mr. So-and-so told me to show up tomorrow.
Yeah,
at
it's
10,
not
like,
going to
you know,
vary day to day.
No?
And so
Okay.
like our remote teachers that are working for first and second, you will have a scheduled time every Thursday that you have that remote lesson, every Friday. So it won't change day to day. And we don't, like some districts have week A, week B. It's going to be the same week to week to week. So those schedules can be posted. And
Will
we
the
just,
Google
if they
Meet
would
link
consider it.
stay the same too?
I'm sorry, what?
Will the Google Meet link stay the same too, or will that?
I would assume so.
So for the
Should.
upper grades, yes, because we have one teacher that's for the most part delivering the instruction, or if they switch, they'll still use the same link. And most of the teachers I know that are starting to give daily schedules, that is, I've seen them, we can definitely share back the feedback as well, which is very hopeful,
I think it would be
sorry.
helpful.
Yeah,
They
I
could
think
about
the
it.
specialist schedule was the one with the golden, but I think now they've streamlined this a little bit. In the lower grades, the remote teachers will have their own link versus the classroom teacher,
classroom,
just
okay.
because it's a separate teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll also try to work with them to see if we can streamline like both schedules for parents, so it's on one, maybe on one visual, so
Whatever,
that-
I'm sure you.
That's easy, yeah, that's not a big task.
If you could
It's not a big
consider it.
ask, we can do that, yes.
I know, it's like one more thing, and
Yeah.
the schedule's changing.
Right.
It just would be super less frustrating.
Well, and feedback is so helpful because like sometimes you're in it and you know what it looks like as you've
Yeah.
created it, and it's
Yeah.
really helpful to hear from families, kind of like what's working and what's not, so
And
we
I'm one of
can
those
kinda-
parents, I'd like to,
Mhm.
like where, you're gonna be there, you're showing
Right.
up.
Right,
Yeah.
well, we appreciate that, yeah, so.
have a quick question that's more just nuts and bolts, and for the viewing, our throngs of fans that are watching right now or later on YouTube. For the specials in the beginning, in the first half of the year, I know there was a lot of grace and flexibility and
Yes.
everybody adhering to the schedule, and I know attendance was tracked, I think, but those weren't graded.
Right.
Is that shifting going into, is it just so that parents are aware that there's a little more responsibility and sort of?
There is, and we're
repercussion?
working on that, and we will be sending out some additional information in Wednesday's words. But because it's part of the required 35 hours, we are tracking attendance. We've been tracking attendance in specials all year. What we are looking at is the potential of providing a way for students to make up a missed special if they happen to miss it. So that's something we
okay.
are looking
Yeah.
at and working on with possibly an asynchronous assignment. We're in the early stages of discussing that.
Okay.
We are also looking at attendance in specials possibly contributing more to their participation grade on the report card versus to their overall attendance. So we have some details that we have to finalize, and that will be sent out to parents in the Wednesday's words.
Okay. Just so, I think a lot of parents sort of
Yeah.
did their very best but assumed it didn't.
Yeah, we knew from the feedback that was one of the challenges, was the live specials, because they do alternate between whether they're asynchronous or live. And so we are looking at how to create a little bit of flexibility. But again, that's going to take some more time. We wanted to get the academic core finalized,
for
and
sure.
then we're going to
Yep.
work
Yep.
through some of those other things.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Very helpful.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the Phase 2 changes as outlined?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Excellent. All right, I think I
Thank you,
can
Vicky.
walk through most of the rest of these things fairly quickly. We had negotiated a memo of agreement with the Norfolk Teachers Association that reflected our plans for Phase 1. We have worked to negotiate a modification to that agreement to reflect the changes. So I have that for the committee to vote tonight. The changes are highlighted in red. They're very minor. The first one is number 27. It does reflect that at the time we did the first memo of agreement, we were still negotiating how we would modify ed eval to meet the safety requirements. We have an agreement on that, and that's attached to the back of this packet. It does look a little different because of the safety protocols for COVID. We also indicated that members would meet the requirements of the Mass Department of Ed for the structured learning time. And our original, they were either teaching in person or remote. This reflects they're teaching in a blended platform. The other change that I wanted to really highlight for the committee is that, as you're aware, the FFCRA, the federal COVID relief that people could take if they were exposed to COVID at work or if they had to be out because of quarantine for COVID, that's expired. It expired December 31st and is no longer available. Our original MOA gave teachers an additional 5 paid days if they were exposed to COVID at work. So those 5 days still remain, but the other 10 that they would have had through the federal leave has expired. What we are proposing and worked with the Teachers Association to replace that is to do a voluntary COVID sick bank that members would donate sick days to, and that people who are exposed to COVID at work, have to quarantine as a result of exposure at work, or have COVID, could access up to 10 days from the voluntary sick bank in lieu of the federal leave. So we need a vote to approve the revised MOA that has those 3 major changes: the ed eval, the change in platform teaching, and the establishment of a COVID sick bank, voluntary COVID sick bank.
So do we have a motion to accept the revised MOA with the NTA?
I move to accept the revised MOA with the NTA with the 3 specified changes.
Second?
Second.
Any questions or further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, so I have 2
Thank you for
originals,
working that out.
3 originals. Tom, I can give them to you to start signing, and then Thomas can sign them at the end of the meeting. In there, great. The next thing, we had written a regional grant that Dot Pearl came to talk to you about. It's between the 4 districts. It's for about $350,000, and it's grant to fund student mental health initiatives. We had originally budgeted for 2 social workers through that grant. We hired one. We've been trying for over a year to fill that second position, but because of the critical shortage of mental health staff across the state right now in response to COVID, we have been unable to fill that. Another regional priority that we have been working on in partnership with all of the districts is increasing our efforts towards educational equity and anti-bias curriculum, working to make sure that all of our students feel a sense of belonging in the school, that we're looking at practices that may disadvantage certain populations of students, and we've been working on that collaboratively for a year now. What we are proposing is that we change the grant funding and amend the grant, and instead of the social worker, we hire a regional director of diversity, equity, and inclusion to help lead that continued work, to provide. We've been contracting out for a lot of our professional development at the same cost. If we hire somebody with expertise, we can provide that more continuous professional development ongoing. So this would be a second regional position. We have, through that grant, we have Dot Pearl as the Director of Wellness. We have one regional social worker, and this would be the third position that's within the parameters of the grant that will help us continue our efforts in that domain. So we advertised this a couple weeks ago. We have several applicants. That would be a regional interview process. I just wanted to let the committee know we are moving forward in that direction and answer any questions that anybody might have.
Great, great, sounds great.
Great. All right, we are going to bring Todd back. We have, as you know, and it does seem like years ago, we worked on a roof project, roof replacement at the H. Olive Day School. We did apply to MSBA for grant funding for that project. The project was fairly extensive because there was structural work, insulation work, in addition to the roof work that was done. Todd is here tonight, and he will walk you through a summary of the closing costs. We've closed that project out, and I believe just received the last payment from MSBA. So I'll turn it back to Todd.
Thank you. So Matt Hafner and I put together this overview 2-page handout for the committee. And in summary, the town approved our proposed project for the replacement of the roof at the day school through town meeting at $3.5 million. The final analysis, we expended just over $3.2 million for this project. We came in under budget about $264,000. As Ingrid mentioned, this was an extensive project. It wasn't simply a roof replacement. There were structural issues. We had issues with insulation. There were masonry repairs. We replaced windows, as you know, skylights, and repaired the cupola. And Matt could tell you all the gory details that he went through administering this program. But it turned out, as you know, very successful and very attractive. And on the second page is just a sort of high-level summary of the source of funds that made up the $3.5 million was authorized. In the end, the town did not borrow the full amount. They could have. The town held back borrowing about $185,000 from the town meeting authorization. We were successful, as you may recall, with the Freeman Kennedy construction project, and had nearly $950,000 of unexpended funds from that construction project that allowed us to start the design and get the project rolling. And then with the Mass School Building Authority assistance, the state authority contributed $1,043,000 in grant reimbursement funds. Again, because of the extenuating repairs we had to do, certain costs were ineligible for their grant program. The town ended up issuing just under $1.2 million in bonds. We expended the $3.2 million, again, high level. Architectural and engineering services, $187,000. Owner's project management services, $85,000. The general construction, over $2.9 million. and there were some incidental other project costs of just under 28,000. So because the town didn't borrow the full authorization, again, we saved about 264,000 versus the original vote of town meeting. The project has 79,000 and change available, unexpended, that could be reallocated by town meeting for another capital purpose going forward. So the 79 is less than our overall savings because the town did not have the need to borrow to the full extent authorized by town meeting. So it was a challenging project. As I say, Matt could give you the sort of gory details sometime if you're interested of what he went through. Did a terrific job on our behalf. And we have a really nice product to show for it, so.
And two things that I would add for that. So we ended up with a total unexpended savings of about 263,000, as Todd said. In addition to that, we did run into significant unexpected structural rot in the, I don't know what you call the fascia. And when we did, took the shingles off the cupola, there was also significant structural damage. So we absorbed those additional costs. And the select board also voted to maintain the tile design on the front, and that was a cost of about 25,000. So in addition to all of the additional unexpended costs that we were able to absorb by creating savings in other areas of the project, we still had almost over $250,000 of savings. So it's great to see. And again, the total cost to the town after you deduct the MSBA reimbursement that we had through the grant is really close to $2 million. And of that, 900,000 was a savings from a prior construction school project. So for what we expended on that project, we have a roof that should last for 50 years. We are also going to see savings in return in heat because we have insulation. We're not losing. I think you probably remember I brought you the pictures, the heat maps of the heat loss that we had at the building. The climate control is much better. The temperatures are much more consistent throughout the building, which we had difficulty maintaining prior. So we're really happy with the results of the project. We don't have any roof leaks. We've had several storms. It's just a much healthier environment for our kids, and again, with a significant budget savings from the overall costs, even though we did run into construction contingencies.
Quick aside on that. So now this is two major projects that we have done school-related that came in 1.2 million roughly under budget, and that's not even including the other 79,000 that Todd made reference to. And the reason I make that point is, and someone had alluded to this earlier, the town continues to grow, our population has continued to grow, and I don't say this to be the bearer of bad news, it's a statement of fact. At some point, Freeman is going to need to be expanded.
Absolutely.
And I know that is a difficult thing for people to understand in challenging times. However, we've got to put these kids somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think when we get to that, we'll make all the proper presentations and give all the documentation. But I do think it does support the credence, or lends credence to the idea that we can successfully manage building projects at the school level, because we're 2 for 2, and there's a lot to be said for that. So the same thoughtfulness, the same care, everything will be taken into account when it comes time for that building project for Freeman Kennedy, which will happen. I'm sorry to say that, unfortunately, but it does have to happen. But just to hopefully to set people's minds a bit at ease, it will be very properly managed. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind about that, because we have the proven track record to do that, and that same mindset would apply to anything that happens within Freeman Kennedy. So
I would like to add on to that and definitely say thank you so much to Dr. Lardy, Thomas, and Medora, who served on the building subcommittee, and if I'm forgetting it, Matt Hafner, and Representative Dooley, who helped procure the extra money, the grant. And I just, for one, you guys did an amazing job coming under budget, having weekly meetings. You really ran a tight ship, and I really appreciate that. And just having a child who attends HOD, I know I feel better as a parent knowing that roof is fixed, because I saw the cracked trusses in the paperwork and whatnot, and I know for a fact the buckets on the desks, and I know the fact for desks being moved because we had to rip up carpet. I had my 6-year-old telling me about it. So just knowing that the structural damage is fixed, not just replacing the tiles on the roof or whatnot, makes me sleep better at night. So thank you for everybody who put forth. I know you did a lot of work over the summer on it. We can definitely do the projects. So thank you.
And I think I just want to highlight too, in addition to what Thomas said, the projects have been tightly managed. They've come in under budget. They've also come in on time. So our
On
roof
time,
project
yeah.
was started and completed within the designated time frame. We did have an agreement. They would repair damage to carpets and things in the classroom, but we held that off to December because we didn't want to disrupt the learning for kids. So the roof construction part was completed exactly on time, and then the punch list of damage that was fixed over the December break. But in both cases, the Freeman Kennedy opened on time. So I think there's value to that because the longer a project goes over, the increased cost that the town would absorb. So, and again, one of the considerations that MSBA takes into account when awarding projects is if you've ever built with them before and how that project was managed and the success of it. So I think that we were able to get the grant funding for the roof in large part because of the Freeman Kennedy and because that was a successful project. So we have a good track record with the state, and that's cut the town's costs in half. The reimbursement rate's been over 50% for all of those projects. So I think that's important too.
Worth mentioning, I think, too, is the fact that we have a good track record with MSBA, but they as well, I'm sure they aren't too worried about it, but they have a good track record with us.
Yes.
They reimburse timely, they manage projects well. Things do not go unnoticed and do not, kind of get left by the wayside when you are partnering with them on a school building project. I know, particularly with respect to the roof, in the debate that led up to the vote that awarded the funds for that project, there was a tremendous amount of concern that we would not be reimbursed or that it was, sort of a, I heard it referred to as a President's Day sale type thing where you're being told you were going to get all of this extra stuff, but really you were still just paying for your own project, which has proven not to be the case. They're a tremendous partner to partner with when you are selected. It's not easy to be selected to work with them. I know with respect to the roof, we had to ask twice?
We had to
three
go
times?
twice. There was
Twice.
such demand the first round that they changed the criteria. You had to have a roof that was over 30 years, where their threshold's usually 25. So we were delayed a year and had to reapply a second time.
Right, and so currently for the Freeman, we're still in their application pool, I
Yeah.
think, to see if they'll
Right.
wanna
Yeah,
work
we
with us
submitted an
again.
application. It was supposed to be voted at the May board meeting for MSBA, but because of COVID, all of those timelines were delayed.
back.
I believe it'll be considered at the April meeting, and we'll know further from there.
In May, they vote. Should I bake some brownies and bring it up there? Like,
I don't think they'll let you in because of COVID, but
I'll drop it outside.
So
I'll
they're
send some
gonna be on
pizzas.
Zoom.
Please,
We
please.
throwing brownies at a screen.
I'll keep it under
And
$50.
some pizza with pepperonis and Freeman Kennedy spelled out. Like,
I think the one thing too that I do want to emphasize, for the past probably 4 years, every year that we've gone to the advisory board and the select board, we've provided the NESDEC enrollment projections. We've been talking about the space crunch. Because of the pandemic this year, it's really raised public awareness. If we were not at such a critical space shortage at H. Olive Day, we would be in a position where we could start to bring more kids back at a more rapid pace. Currently, this year, our library, our music room, the cafeteria are all classroom spaces. We had to reallocate and move offices to classrooms. We expect, as I said, we have the largest kindergarten we've had in many years. The NESDEC had projected 164 kids. We actually exceeded that. We're at 167. Next year's kindergarten, there is, by the census, a slight drop in birth rates. We opened kindergarten registration yesterday. We have 99 kids registered. So that's within 24 hours. So I'm not sure that the drop that they're projecting is actually going to materialize. So enrollment is a significant issue. Okay. All right, great. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
Thanks, Dad.
That was
All
like a good news, bad news sandwich. I like that. This was good news, but
Yes.
here's bad news.
The next item should be very quick. As we talked about the federal COVID leave as expiring, we talked about with the teachers' memo of agreement updates, we established a voluntary sick bank for teachers to replace that. We are proposing also doing the same and following the same protocol for our non-union staff. So this is a proposal Roxanne has drafted of the language for a non-union sick bank that mirrors identically the wording for the contractual sick leave bank. So we just need a motion to establish a non-union sick bank and to continue to provide those same 5 district days to non-union staff who are exposed at work.
So do we have a motion to establish that non-union sick bank as described? Do
So moved.
we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion or questions?
I just had one silly note. Page 2, number 4, there just looked like there was a typo. I think sick tie should be sick time.
Yes,
That's all. Nothing
I will
exciting.
get that to Roxanne to fix.
There's some ill neckwear that we had to
Yes.
address.
Exactly.
Yeah, we'll fix that, thank you. Okay, great.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
All right,
we're
so I think
on to
that's-
Committee reports.
It for Ingrid, King Philip.
Oh, okay.
Been waiting for this, Sarah.
So last night there was a very heated discussion
Oh, fun.
revolving around, excuse me, sorry, a few things. I didn't bring my battery with me. Should have. So the middle school and the high school are definitely struggling with staffing right now. They're on the cusp of having to go back to remote. They're hopefully not going to have to because there are some teachers coming out of quarantine next week. But right now it's been a very tough week for the administration, helping to fill in for duties and stuff like that, pick up, drop off. The middle school follows similar format to the high school in regards to synchronous learning on days home, a lot sort of what we're doing here. They're going to follow a 6-period schedule and log in on home days. The state is asking for the average of 35 hours, as we know. Another new thing, similar to here, you talked about last meeting, the 14-day quarantine will be enforced. You cannot test out of the 8th day. Wednesdays are going to stay the same right now. It's just a very important day in relation to contact tracing. When you have that Wednesday with everyone at home, there's 48 hours, so you don't have to quarantine as many people, and that's been the argument going forward. We are continually reevaluating Wednesdays. We do know that people want more instruction and more content on Wednesdays, but for right now, it just needs to stay as is, and we're just looking at other options. There was a survey that went out, and there was a great response. Sort of similar to what we saw here, requests for more in person, and some people are very happy with how it's set up. Some students are thriving, some are not. The proposal last night that we got from the superintendent was to send out a request to parents to either choose to continue as is or move to fully remote for the rest of the year and commit to the rest of the school year. This will allow them to have empty seats, because right now, if someone chooses to go remote, either for quarantine for a sports event or something like that, you have to keep their spot in the school open. If they commit to fully remote, we know that that spot is open, so you can take someone who is struggling at home with the remote learning and bring them back into the classroom physically, which is great. Priority would be given to students with some mental health issues going on, as well as students who are really not thriving with the remote learning and are in real good chances of failing for the year. After that, it'll be opened up to other students, but those will have priority first. Lots of discussion around that, but it did pass, so that's going to be going out to parents. And they're hoping to start doing that by the middle of February, having all those students come back and switch out and things like that. Let's see. Our budget presentation was moved to February 28th because the governor's budget is coming out February 27th. No, January? I think we're at February. I think it's January.
I think it's the end of January.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're.
So our next meeting is January 28th. Or that's the budget meeting. I mixed up my days on there. But yeah, we're gonna start budget talks, and yeah, hopefully some more normalcy coming up with the vaccine and getting more kids in the school. We'll see.
Yeah, I would say, just as you're aware, our regional public health nurses that have supported us with the contact tracing, they do really the home side, who else your child's been in contact with. They now are being transitioned to support the vaccine rollout. So all of the contact tracing is really falling on the school nurses in all 3 districts. And where you're hearing KP, we're all struggling with staffing, but at the high school it's exacerbated significantly, because if you have a student positive case, that child probably went to 7 different teachers' classes.
Right.
So there's more staff that sometimes have to quarantine as a result of cases. So their contact tracing demands are significant,
Yeah,
because
and
you're
they're
not
at a-
tracing the kids that a kid came in contact with in one homeroom. You have to figure out who they attended all 7 classes with and who the contacts are.
There's 3 feet, not 6 feet, so it
So they have double the
affects more
contacts.
people, yeah.
Yeah. So it's been definitely challenging for them.
All righty. Thank you. Moving on to policy.
So we are bringing forth a policy tonight to be voted on, and it's a COVID travel policy that basically codifies what's going on right now, but we're putting it in print. Dr. Lardy, do you want to explain a little bit
Sure.
more?
So the school is required to implement and enforce the state travel ban and the state travel requirements. Basically, if anybody travels to a high-risk state outside of Massachusetts, when they come back, the state requires them to either quarantine for 10 days or to have a COVID test within 72 hours of arrival in Massachusetts. Once they receive the negative test, they're allowed to go back. So we are required to enforce that. The language, as we talked about at our last school committee, gives some flexibility for students under 10. DESE and the Department of Public Health encourage you to have students under 10 follow the quarantine requirements of the other members of the household, even though they don't have to test. So to stay home until their household members test negative or complete the quarantine. So these are all state requirements that we have to implement and enforce. The challenge that we are having is that it's hard to keep track of, and some parents call and notify us we're traveling and know what they have to provide to the schools. Others don't, and then we find out the kid will say in their class, oh, I went to see my cousins in Maryland this weekend.
What?
And then we have to bring the kid to the office, we have to call and notify the parents that they have to meet the requirements of the travel ban. And so we wanted to streamline that and put it all in one place so parents knew what the expectations were. So this policy doesn't provide any protections beyond what the state requires. It
Right.
just codifies the requirements of the state travel ban. What we're doing in addition is putting 2 online forms on the website so that parents can notify us just by filling out a form on the website. Instead of having to call and get the nurse, it's a very simple form. It says we're intending to travel, the dates of the travel, the dates of return, and you hit submit. That goes automatically to the school nurse, so they know the family's traveling. And then there's a compliance certificate that you fill out when you get back that just says we either completed the quarantine or we went and had the tests, and email the test results. So it should really simplify the process for parents and help our nurses better track this. As you know, as I said, they're doing all of the contact tracing. They're required to enforce all these protocols, and the more we can streamline it, the better we can be in terms of efficiency. So we are asking for a vote to approve the policy, and again, the 2 online forms I printed out, they look a little different because they're meant to be an online form. They're very basic, just the dates of travel, destination of travel, date of departure, date of return. And then there's a checklist of what you have to submit in the compliance that you would fill out when you return.
And this has been reviewed by council, because I had a question about HIP, I had a question about should we be asking parents
Yep.
to tell us when they travel.
Yep.
And it's the things that we're asking anyway, but now it's just very clear, and as Ingrid said, streamlined.
Yep.
We're doing this anyway,
Yep.
so verbally, so why not
And we're
have it
required
written?
to enforce
And
it.
we're required, right, we're
Yep.
following the state regulations. And it prevents, again, because we've had incidences of children, just innocently mentioning that they went and traveled here or there out of state and having to be pulled, asked to go home until they,
Yeah.
and it's upsetting. So let's just make the rules clear.
Was there any thought to have people provide proof of their departure and return dates?
We are not asking for proof of departure and return. We are asking for proof of a negative COVID test. And from the return date, the stated return date, they either have to do 10-day quarantine or show us evidence. But they do have to sign and certify that the data that they're providing is accurate.
Okay.
And I think one thing we do have to mention with this policy is that there can be consequences up to possibly suspension for not following this rule. So there will be.
Well, and a fine levied by the state if you're violating the Massachusetts
There could be, yeah.
travel requirements. And just like, I would point out to anyone who's watching this and cares about my 2 cents, this is such a I mean, it's not fluid now because pretty much every place except Hawaii is a no-go zone, so.
That's right, yeah.
But
Have
really,
fun if
anybody
you're-
right now traveling anywhere outside of Massachusetts.
Traveling anywhere, and I want to be really specific too, like, that includes a day trip to Vermont to go skiing. I mean, that's like, it is a very, if you read, unless you have and fall within an exempt category of traveler, you need to be complying with this, which is, and I wasn't laughing when you were saying kids have mentioned this, I was laughing because I sit my kids down and I say, when you tell your teacher we went skiing, make sure you say it was at Wachusett, because that's where we went. We stayed in the state. We're not doing anything fun. Like, we don't leave the state. So it's just, you know, I mean, and that can change as the state requirements change, but.
This is temporary. I mean,
It's a temporary
Right,
travel
exactly.
policy
So it
that
can
is
become
only
less
enforced as long as the
restrictive.
state travel ban is in place.
Yeah, it was less
Following-
restrictive at Thanksgiving. You could go to Vermont. Now Vermont's not considered
Right,
a
right
safe
now
state
everywhere is
anymore.
red.
So it's just, you know.
we're following just what the state is asking, but we're making it more streamlined and.
No, and I think
I
it's
think it's really a nice,
fantastic.
simple process.
And it's really basically to keep everybody, it's just for everyone's safety.
Everyone's safe, yeah.
You know,
The
you don't know, you don't want to
documentation, so we
expose
don't
somebody
miss
who.
a date. I mean, the nurses are tracking the kids that have been exposed and the date that they went out and the date they have to come back to try to have to manage, you know, when did you travel and when did you get back and when's your quarantine over? To have it in one place streamlined is much more manageable, so.
I think
that's
it's
the goal.
fantastic. I'm just, and my point is just that it dovetails so closely onto what the current state policy is,
Yes.
and that changes.
Yep.
Hopefully it will become less restrictive, and,
Yep.
you know, that'll be great, but this will still be centrally located and available for anybody who's traveling in the coming
And we
months.
did link the definition of high-risk areas are those defined by the Department of Public Health, so that as they change on the state, they automatically change on our policy.
And we don't need to change the policy.
Right, we don't need to change because we refer to the state policy.
Okay. So do we have a motion to accept the temporary COVID-19 travel policy?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Adora, I stole your line.
It's nice and concise.
I know,
you
it's easy.
Then we had a second meeting on the harassment policy. This is again just an updated policy. We have separated out sexual harassment because that particular allegation has its own unique protections. And on the advice of counsel, that should be included in a separate policy. So this is just a second reading. There were no changes to the first. If anyone has any additional thoughts. And then you have two policies to vote on tonight that have been through. There have been no changes or additions to any of them. It's the remote learning policy and the remote learning addendum. Again, just defining parameters for which the district might need to transition to remote learning and considerations that would need to be made. So we're just looking for a vote on those two.
Okay. So we need two separate motions. First, do we have a motion to accept the remote learning policy?
I move to accept the remote learning policy as laid out in Exhibit 10.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then do we have a motion to accept the policy for remote learning addendum?
I move to accept the remote learning addendum as illustrated in Exhibit 11.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so then we need to move forward for the acceptance of the minutes for the 22nd. If I remember correctly, Sarah, you were not able to attend, so it'll just be the four of us involved in that motion. So if you've had a chance to read it, do we have a motion to accept our meeting minutes from December 22nd meeting?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
We are scheduled, our next time together, it'll be February 9th. Does that work for everybody? Okay?
Where are we going?
Sounds great.
Hawaii.
I'm going to Hawaii.
Can our next meeting be in Hawaii?
I'll be in Hawaii, yeah.
If it were to be
That's our big
a
surprise. Our next
snow
meeting is in
storm,
Hawaii.
Would we just
all right.
move remote if that was the case?
What
You
was
meet
that?
in Hawaii?
Was this-
Jen wants a weather contingency.
I want to weather, what do we do? I need to know.
If it's a weather closure,
Yeah.
we could either cancel and reschedule, or we could consider a virtual meeting.
But we have to
It would
give-
have to be 48 hours in
Oh,
advance.
48
to change.
hours?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a open meeting
Okay,
law.
so probably not,
So-
okay.
But if we know there's a big storm coming, we could change it to remote just in
Okay.
case, so,
And then it won't snow.
yeah, and then it won't.
Of course not.
You see where my
'Cause we'll be
need
in
for like
Hawaii.
schedules, like I need to know what's coming up.
There's a lot of anxiety about a meeting that's.
What are we doing?
All right, finally, we need a motion to adjourn tonight. So do we have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
I move to adjourn.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Second.
Assume we don't have further discussion on that. So, all in favor?
Aye.
And we are adjourned. Thank you very much.